For today's video, I'm gonna talk about the first cartoon appearance of that big bad baldy, Lex Luthor. So, alright, let's go. Yeah!
So, Lex Luthor is totally pissed off at Superman because Sup has been thwarting him left, right, and center, right? So Lex figures, man, he's gotta think outside of the box, try some new angle to commit crimes, and get away with it. So he does the most normal thing anyone else would do. He builds a time machine. Which, is actually pretty extreme, but also it's like pretty impressive, man. Not gonna lie, right? It's not really a time machine, so much. It's more like a time video conference, Zoom call thingamaroo, And he figures to get help from somebody in the past, which, there are a lot of devious people in the past he can get help from, but luckily, he zooms in on Merlin the magician, which, is pretty hardcore. And he says to Merlin, "Yeah, Merlin, I'm looking to become independently wealthy, and I'm going to do so by doing these incredibly good deeds, which may look exactly like a crime. Is there any way you can help me out by making sure nobody notices it's me doing these good crimes? Deeds?" And Merlin is all like, "Oh yeah, man, I'm hip to that, right?" And Merlin offers him a formula to temporarily turn Luthor into the appearance of an 8-year-old child, which would only last for 30 minutes to perform these allegedly good deeds. And boom, man, Luthor's off to the races, right? Luthor and his buddy, Blanky, they rob a bank in broad daylight. But as Superman and the police are on the way, the dastardly crime duo uses this potion and turns themselves into kids, right? So Superman and the police are completely dumbfounded. They can't find these adult crooks anywhere, man. They just see these two dopey kids hanging around, who happen to be holding bags of money, which clearly came from some other bank. So seeing as Luthor and Blinky were able to get away with it like no problem at all, means that the crime spree continues. The Metropolis Museum gets robbed, an armor bank van gets completely cleaned out, and still, man, Superman's beside himself, right? So Luthor gets Merlin on the horn again, and he needs to get a new fix of magic. Because as Luthor says, man, like, what if some people are starting to get wise that there's these two goofy looking kids hanging around every crime scene? He's gotta try something new. So Merlin offers him an invisibility potion that'll only work for 15 minutes, right? And it's kinda crappy because it really only works at night. Doesn't quite sound the greatest, but meh, free magic is free magic, right? So Lex Luthor cuts the power to the entirety of Metropolis and tries to rob the US Mint Treasury? Is that what I wrote? US? Yeah, the Treasury thingamaroo, Honestly, I'm just too lazy to go back and look at the clip to get the name. Lots of money! Which would be a pretty incredible heist. So as Superman restores the city's power, well, Luthor's magic is wearing off and the police are able to put their peepers on him. Luthor's busted! Or is he? No! And, well, yes? Luthor used the de-aging potion to try to get away, but, he used the potion in front of everybody. So now everybody can recognize him as the kid that was hanging around every single crime scene and start to piece this all together. And he's busted for this, attempted robbery on the Treasury. And Superman catches him like no problem. And Luthor is out of tricks because, well, he'll now be tried as an adult and he's looking pretty screwed. But with that is the end of this fantastic tale.
Yeah, so that's like an episode, eh? Which is still pretty hip and, kind of a bit goofy, but, that's kind of how comic stories went. Sometimes it's like James Bond movies in the 60s, right? When the gadgets got really outlandish and, really wild, That was like some early Silver Age comics, and that is like this featured episode. Like a time phone machine, right? That's pretty out there, for a concept for an episode, but it's still pretty true to, Lex Luthor's character, right? He is a genius, and man, if Tony Stark can build a time machine, so can Lex Luthor. Well, time phone. And also when Lex took the youth potion and he was mocking Superman, how he's basically getting away with the crime, that's still classic Lex. But speaking of young Lex Luthor, man, when he's in this episode as an 8-year-old child, like, his hair is brown. But if you know anything about Lex Luthor, man, you know when he had hair, man, it was like a bright red, fantastic curly hair. I guess the animators at Filmation, you know, never read a comic where he had hair at any point in his life, so I guess c'est la vie, right? And Merlin, what a fantastic guy, eh? It must be pretty weird from his point of view, you know, just chilling out in his, you know, medieval bungalow and all of a sudden getting a phone call from the future from some guy and not even questioning the motives from the person from the future. Like, what? So basically the phone call went like this. Hey man, you got any of that magic? Yes, I do have some magic. What would you need it for? Well, you see, there's this thing called a bank that has too much money in it, so I'm planning on liberating some of the money out of the bank. I see. And what would you do with this money that you've liberated from the bank? Oh, that's the best part. I would put that liberated money into my own Swiss bank account, and I would have exclusive use of that money for myself. It sounds kind of fishy. I'm not so sure that I should trust you, but it just so happens that I have quite the surplus of magic that I need to unload, so, here you go. You know, like, it makes Merlin seem like a bad guy in this episode, but, you know, they kind of claim that he's ignorant. He didn't know that, you know, Lex Luthor is a bad person wanting to do crimes with his magic, but Merlin also seemed really, you know, unfazed that he's getting a phone call from the future, so I gotta wonder how many other people from the future have contacted him. And if Lex Luthor has a time machine, you know, like, you could call someone from the past who has a decent amount of money, give them some information in exchange, you know, for them burying some sort of treasure. So in the future, Lex could just dig up this treasure, you know, legally and, you know, not have any problems with all of a sudden getting this mass amount of, you know, ancient artifacts. But that's just me rambling, you know, that's just what I do. And there are more ramblings this way.
So yeah, man, Lex Luthor, eh? That classic Superman villain. Did you know that he first appeared in Action Comics number 23 in 1940? And yes, indeed, he was not bald. He had some pretty fantastic red hair. So, like, how did he get to be bald? Well, you know, kind of, I guess the blame or the praise goes to artist Leo Nowak. So he did some artwork in the Superman newspaper comic strips back in the day, and he accidentally drew Lex Luthor as a bald man for some odd reason that nobody really knows. Some figure that he messed Lex Luthor up with Superman's other arch-nemesis, the Ultra-Humanite, who is a balding older man, or, you know, he just mistook one of Lex Luthor's bald henchmen to be Lex Luthor, you know, how he looked. No one really knows, but Leo made the same mistake again when he drew for Superman number 10 in 1941 and yet again had a bald Lex Luthor. So the other time was just kind of like a one-off, right? It's like, oh well, you know, things happen, you know, hair goes missing, you know, what can you do? But like to have it happen, you know, a couple more times, it's like, okay man, is Lex Luthor bald? Is he wearing a wig? Like, what's the deal? So that question keeps popping up with Lex Luthor, so it's like, DC kind of had to address it, which they did. So in the Silver Age of comics, we learn how Lex Luthor went bald. And the story happened in Adventure Comics 271 in 1960, where we find a young Lex Luthor, you know, accidentally starts a fire in his laboratory. Superboy comes on over to help put the fire out, but as he's blowing out the fire, he accidentally gets a bunch of chemicals on Lex's head and bam! His hair is destroyed permanently. So angry at Superboy is Lex that, you know, he basically became his arch-villain right there and then. The story of how Lex became bald or was born bald or whatever, you know, has always kind of changed every time they kind of had a rebirth of the DC universe, you know, here and there. But yeah, man, Lex being bald, man, that's just the way the character is. Unless he comes back as a clone, then he's got some pretty awesome hair. But, you know, realistically, man, the dude's bald. And for his time-traveling accomplice in this featured episode, Merlin, yeah, he made some appearances in the comic books as well. He did pop up in a DC Comics imprint called New Comics number 3 in 1936, which was a story called King Arthur, which, as you could probably figure out, is just the whole telling of King Arthur, you know, the Round Table, Excalibur, and all that kind of stuff. There was a more modern version of Merlin that appeared in National Comics #1 in 1940, and that was from the Quality Comics group, where this Merlin was a descendant of the original Arthur era Merlin, you know, and he took over the mantle of Merlin in the 40s, which is, you know, pretty neat, eh? When DC Comics took over Quality Comics and all of their characters, you know, Merlin was lumped in on there, right? And eventually, Merlin and a bunch of other Golden Age heroes became part of the All-Star Squadron, which started in 1984. So that's, yeah, pretty neat, eh? Good old Merlin. So this was Lex Luthor's first cartoon appearance. Luthor's first live-action appearance was in the 1950 classic film serial series, Atom Man vs. Superman. And from here on in, man, you've had multiple actors portray or voice Lex Luthor in a multitude of different projects, man. So yeah, wherever you see Superman, you will see Lex Luthor. So it's pretty good to see. But yeah, pretty much all I got for you for this one. Kind of quick and short, or is it? I don't know. But either way, with this, that, those, and the other things, I guess that's that.
Right on, and there you go. So thanks for watching the video. I hope you liked it as much as I did making it. Also, feel free to check out the source material that I featured in this video. And if you want to leave a comment on anything you may have liked or things I might have missed in this, you know, feel free to do so. Or anything else, you know, just to say hi. That's cool too. And other than that, you know, have a great day. Thanks.